So the frenzy over family separation at the border seems to have peaked, at least for the moment. Now that the smoke is settling, we're learning what we always learn in these things. It turns out the issue was a lot more complicated than they were telling us on TV. The policy in question, for example, is not at all new. Watch as Senator Tammy Baldwin tries to explain away that fact.
As so many people in this country are certainly outraged by the cages and the thermal blankets and the facilities housing these kids, you know, they were all there in 2014 under President Obama. And my question to you, Senator Baldwin, is did you speak up against them then?
You know, on this issue that we get into a moment where we're making progress, and then when it stalls, we turn around.
So the people in charge were misrepresenting the facts. They were lying to you. No surprise there. What's different, though, and it is different, is how they did it this time. There was a harshness to the moral panic that most of us hadn't seen before. The usual people yelling on TV were saying things that adults didn't used to say in public even a few months ago. They seemed hysterical, crazed, nihilistic. Something had changed. It was creepy. In case you've forgotten, here's a selection from MSNBC.
What the Trump administration has entered into is a war of terror with the cartels in Central America, in which they have now said, we must terrorize people more than the cartels are terrorizing people in their home country so they don't come here. And that is a bidding war that is ghastly and a moral abomination, and one I pray that we cannot possibly win.
3 tender age shelters in South Texas. Lawyers and medical providers just, I think I'm gonna have to hand this off. Yeah. Sorry. That does it for us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow. Now it is time for The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, where he is live in Brownsville, Texas.
So according to MSNBC, Trump is literally worse than the Mexican drug cartels, the ones that behead people. Needless to say, he's also a racist.
I do not believe that President Trump would implement this at the Canadian border and do this to white children.
The president appears to have a blind spot as it relates to compassion or the lack thereof for communities of color, for vulnerable communities, for people of diversity.
Sexism, racism, white supremacy, thuggery, bigotry, along with complicit men and women within the administration.
What you're watching there is propaganda. Over time, it's effective, and of course, that's why they do it. But what does it do to the country? Well, just ask the DHS Secretary, Kirstjen Nielsen. She tried to have dinner the other night at a restaurant on 14th Street in downtown Washington, and here's what happened. So one of the Red Guards you just heard screaming is a current, it turns out, Department of Justice employee named Allison Hrabar. Hrabar was proud to be there, as she later told a reporter, quote, anyone who sees Kirstjen Nielsen at dinner, anyone who sees anyone who works at DHS and ICE at dinner, can confront them like this. That's what we hope this will inspire people to do. In other words, if we disagree with your political views, you no longer have rights, including the right to go to outside or eat in restaurants. Is that really a precedent that we're comfortable with establishing? Well, yes, explained Jessica Valenti of The Guardian. She tweeted that, quote, Nielsen should never be able to show her face in public again. Over at the Washington Post, Christine Emba agreed with that. Girl, bye, she tweeted, adding that, quote, I'm frankly astonished she dares show her face in public. Well, this is the definition of mob justice. MSNBC anchors applaud it. Nielsen's real sin, they explained, was daring to eat Mexican food.
As we go to break, activists heckled Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen. She made the very tone-deaf, Ivanka-like decision to dine at a Mexican restaurant last night.
Over on CNN, Ana Navarro had the same response, quote, are there no Norwegian restaurants in Washington, D.C., she asked. In other words, when it comes to eating, stick to your own race. Oh, stop the race mixing, mean DHS secretary. Keep in mind there was a time not so long ago when liberals opposed segregation. There was also a time when liberals supported nonviolence. No longer. Splinter, a website owned by Univision, posted White House aide Stephen Miller's personal cell phone number. The right to privacy doesn't apply to those who oppose the left. Sam Levine, meanwhile, he's a professor at NYU, put personal information about ICE employees on the internet. His readers got the message. But in case that message was too subtle, here's actor Peter Fonda on Twitter encouraging his fellow progressives, quote, get the addresses of the ICE agents and surround their homes in protest. We should find out what schools their children go to and surround the schools in protest. We don't have to take the agents' kids. We only need to surround their schools and scare the bleep out of them and worry the bleep out of the agents. We need to scare the bleep out of them, exclamation point. Need to make their children worry now. And then Fonda wrote this about the current DHS secretary, quote, Kirstjen Nielsen is a lying gash who should be put in a cage and poked at by passers-by. The gash should be pilloried in Lafayette Square naked and whipped by passers-by while being filmed for posterity. End quote. Just another day on progressive Twitter. So where's all of this going? You know the answer to that. You can feel where it's going. The question is, how did we get here? That's not complicated either. Over the past couple of days, Trump administration officials have been compared to Adolf Hitler and the Nazis dozens of times on CNN and MSNBC. What's the effect of that? Think about it for a second. If you really believed Nazis were taking power in your country, what would you do? What wouldn't you do? You would have an obligation to act, to use force. Maybe you'd start by screaming at people in restaurants, but you wouldn't stop there. You might try to assassinate Republican members of Congress at a baseball practice. Who knows what you would do? Hurting Nazis wouldn't make you a bad person. It would make you a good person, like Dietrich Bonhoeffer. This is how countries fall apart, when one side ceases to see the other side as human. Progressive leaders could do a lot to cool the tone here. They don't even try. Where's Chuck Schumer in all this? How about Nancy Pelosi? They're okay with Republican officials being threatened by mobs in restaurants in public? They haven't said otherwise. Apparently they are. And what about Jeff Zucker at CNN or Andy Lack at NBC? They're okay with their contributors calling fellow Americans Nazis on TV? Maybe they're fine with that. They're certainly benefiting from it, for now anyway, until things fall completely apart. And at this pace, it won't be long. Joining us now to make sense of all of this is our friend Dave Rubin. So, Dave, it seems to me, look, I host a debate show. I have for many years. I'm for debate. I'm for contentious debate. I just had a contentious debate. But calling people Nazis does seem to cross some kind of line, because if you really thought Nazis were taking over your country, wouldn't you have a moral obligation to hurt them?
Yes, you would. And Tucker, as you know, on my show for the last couple years, I am someone that comes from the left. I was a progressive.
Yes.
I still consider myself liberal, although that word has been hijacked over the past couple of years. But the issues that I've been calling out on the left are the issues that you're talking about right there. Those quotes from the MSNBC hosts, the clips that you just played, this is what the arguments of the left have been whittled down to. Everyone, in your conversation just now with Jorge Ramos, everything comes down to everyone else being a racist or a bigot or somehow acting in prejudice. And this is a horrific, horrific way to enter an argument in the public space, because then you keep calling people Nazis, then you say it's okay to punch Nazis, and now you can actually punch everybody, you can dox people, you can do whatever you want to them. And that's sort of, I mean, if you ask me, really, if you followed what I've done for the last couple of years, this was the obvious outcome of all of this. And very quickly on the Nazi part of this, you know, the Nazis, beyond exterminating millions and millions of people, they did not let their own citizens leave the country, right? They didn't let the Jews leave. They actually put their own citizens in concentration camps and in, to slaughter their own people. This wasn't people that couldn't come into their country. This is a massive difference, and of course there's a zillion other massive differences, but the hyperbole is so over the top at this point that it just doesn't seem like anyone's going to rein it in. You're right. Where are the leaders? Actually, Chuck Schumer, what did he say a day or two ago? He wants to make this about Trump. So we've got Trump basically versus this awful machine, and I don't see any way it's going to stop. And just the last couple of days on social media, you know, Twitter can be quite horrific. I know you know that, Tucker. But the last couple of days have just been an absolute toxic nightmare. And for the few of us that want to engage in honest conversation, and look, Tucker, you and I, we have a bunch of political differences, but we can always do this respectfully, and that's being lost. But, you know, the silver lining to this is there's a lot of people watching you, there's a lot of people watching me, and I think there is a growing counterbalance to this, but they're just not as hysterical as everybody else.
Yeah, these people are playing with fire, and they ought to slow down because people can, I mean, this is not moving in the right direction. Dave, thank you very much for your perspective.
Thanks, Tucker.